welcome back for another episode of Connecting the Commonwealth. Today we're here with Diana Cahill. She's an executive director of a local charity. And how many locations do you have, Diana?
We have 2.
We've got 2 locations, and she's kind of working on maybe a new thing that she's excited about and passionate about that layers into what she currently does, and certainly is really important for all business owners to think about, and we're going to get in that today. So anyways, Diana, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Sure, we got Eric Douglas with us here too with Family Wealth Money Partners.
Thanks.
Yep. And so let's just start, Diana. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your upbringing? Your parents, a little bit about them. If you had brothers or sisters, what was like growing up in the household?
So I grew up in a household of 6. There were 4 of us kids. I was the second oldest, and my dad was he actually acquired a business and became a business owner himself. And so I watched a lot of those kind of things that the leadership qualities that he had, and the things that I just, as a young girl watching, I thought, oh, I can do that. I want to do that. Yeah. And my mom was at home with us, taking care of all of us, doing all of the behind the scenes work that I also learned a lot from, and really made me understand the importance of what a mom brings into the equation, but also just the nurture part that needs to go into relationships, whether that's in business or not, just the importance of that. So.
Yeah. So what was the family? Did you have brothers or sisters?
I had 2 sisters and a brother, and I was the second oldest, so there were 3 girls, and then my poor little brother that we did everything to. I mean, dresses, like all the things, so, but he turned out okay. So.
Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye on Tucker, because, we've got 3. The oldest and youngest are girls, and Tucker's right in the middle. So,
yeah.
So what was you were the second oldest, so what was the age gap from?
So my older sister was about 2.5, 3 years older than me, and then myself, and then I have a sister that's a couple of years, I think 2 years younger than me, and then my brother was about 4 years younger than me. Okay. So yeah, so he kind of just got all of it, but he was also, the only boy, so also treated like a royalty sometimes, So.
Now, did you all grow up in Louisville? Or?
We did, yep, that's where I've been my entire life, so.
I feel like as a Louisville person, if I don't ask you where you went to high school, that would be a dock on me. So where'd you all go to high school?
We all went to Valley High School, Dixie Highway. Grew up in the South End, and lived there most of my life. So.
There you go. So now everybody that would ask Diana that first question that everybody asks in town, you already know the answer.
Well, there's really nothing more important, right? When you grow up, we have to figure out how to properly label you and judge you, right?
That's right.
Based on what high school you went to, however long ago.
What did you guys do for fun? Or did you guys travel, or what did you guys do for leisure stuff?
Good question. We went to the beach every year, so had some conversations today actually about the beach. But yeah, we went to the beach every year. So Florida was our go-to, and honestly, I think that we all had a lot of differences as siblings in the different things that we did. Church was a huge part of our lives, and we were in church Sunday and Wednesday, not Monday.
Monday through Friday.
Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night.
That's a new level of dedication.
No. But yeah, we were there all the time. So my parents were very involved in church, and so we did a lot of youth group things and that kind of stuff. But yeah, our vacations were usually go sit on the beach for a week. So still my favorite vacation.
Yeah, it's definitely my wife's family. That is their thing. Hilton Head is their spot. So. Now, our de facto vacation for my family for the rest of my life is going to be a Hilton Head trip at the end of July.
Yes.
And it actually is because my family didn't do that. We kind of went, Charleston was a little bit of a home base for us for the beach, but like sports kind of dictated a lot of where we went and traveled, and we had national competitions and that. So it actually is kind of nice to have that, like, you have maybe 1 or 2 other vacations in addition to it, but it's nice to have that, like, rock.
Yeah.
That this time every year we go to this very similar place, and of course at the time it was like a timeshare, but then my family's we kind of got kicked out of the timeshare because of the kids. So we've gotten used to having to rent a house every time. It's been pretty interesting.
Well, we go down. My wife's family always went to Destin, and so she's been going there ever since she was a kid. But you go there now, and I've been enough times with her now, going with her at her family's places that you go there now and it just feels like a second home. So.
Yeah.
That party is really cool.
Siesta Key, Florida. That's where we go.
Oh, Siesta Key is a spot.
Yes, that's where we go.
We've been trying to plan a vacation there because I had asked around, where's another spot that we can go that you can ride? Because I love Hilton Head because of the bike riding, where you can ride a bike anywhere.
Yep.
And because Destin, you can ride a bike in Destin, but it's not like the easiest, right? It's not like it's built to just ride a bike everywhere like it is in Hilton Head. And everybody said Siesta Key is clear water, white sand, and the bikes, which Hilton Head doesn't have the first two. You can't see Chris Emerson and I both got stung by jellyfish on a recent Hilton Head trip. You can't see them. So that, now it's like a little thing where I'm like, maybe it would be nice to have the clear water. Cool. So your leisure activities, you guys sound like you had a good family unit.
Absolutely.
Were you close with all your siblings, or did you have one that you were super close to?
Oh, come on, put me on the spot. That's not fair.
Yeah. Make sure that we'll tag all of your siblings.
Which one do you like the best?
You got 3 of them, so top 3.
Let's see. My favorite brother is my only brother, so that would be Eddie. So yeah. And then my older sister. I had an older sister and a younger sister. So I had a tendency to my younger sister would look up to me, so we kind of hung out more and stuff. But my older sister, we had some good times too. So yeah.
Do you all do any big family gatherings still? Is everybody in Louisville or moved around a little bit?
No, we're all here.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So my oldest sister has passed away. So she passed away a few years ago. So the rest of us are all here. We don't live too far from my parents, and so we still do all the family get-togethers and things as much as COVID allows you to these days.
Yes. We have an answer for Bashir if he should ask how we operate. And we have an answer for the rest of you.
Yes.
This is recorded on October 28th.
Yes.
The mandates ended a long time ago.
Yeah. Cool. So, it sounds like it was a good family.
Definitely.
Happy times. Felt like that was a good memories for you for the most part. I mean, every family has conflict and ridiculousness.
Of course we do. Yes.
What was it like when you transitioned into? Did you transition to college after high school, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I actually graduated from high school on a Friday, and I started college the next week. So I was an overachiever who I'm going to take summer classes and I'm going to be ahead, and so I did all this.
Is that what you did that too, right?
I absolutely did not. I didn't even know where I was going to college until I think a month. I didn't sign my scholarship papers for baseball until about a month after I graduated high school because I was still taking recruiting trips.
Really?
Yeah. So it wasn't until the end of June or so where I signed my scholarship papers.
Wow.
So I had no clue where I was going to school in a couple months.
Yeah. They were negotiating the Adidas people to get the money to your dad, right?
These were not. These were absolutely not large scale transactions by any means. As anyone who's played baseball in college can attest to, Yeah, I still had to pick up a lot of that bill going to Bellarmine, but anyway.
Cool. So you started in the summer.
I started in the summer.
Unlike every other college student in history.
Yeah, I know. It's so embarrassing now to think back. But yeah, so I went to U of L.
Okay.
And I knew since I was a little girl that I wanted to be an elementary school teacher until my 4th year in college. And then I was like, hey, Mom and Dad, I don't really want to do this anymore. I know you're footing the bill, but this is not what I want to do. So I ended up switching my major. It took me another 1.5 years to graduate, but I got a degree in sociology, which kind of led me into a bunch of different fields. But I just decided that's not what I want to do. I don't want to teach. I ended up teaching later in life, so it's funny how you end up going back. But yeah, I mean, so and I tell my daughters now all the time, please don't do the same thing I did where you change your major the 4th year in. But I just really started to feel like this is not what I'm called to do. And so I really, some of it was just some of the classes I was taking. I thought, man, I am so interested in this, more so than I thought. Some of the prereqs you have to take, or the electives that you take. And it just really led me in a whole different realm than I anticipated I would go.
Yeah, that's one of the good things I think about college. I know there's a lot, that a lot of the schools that we've talked several times, Eric and I and Brian on different podcasts, of how sometimes we don't like that the education system just makes it so that the only path forward is college.
Right.
That trade should be talked about more. Being an entrepreneur should be talked about. There should be more infrastructure in place for those kind of things, and positioning students and using, which something we're going to talk about later, is thinking about who these students are and what kind of people they are and how they're wired up, and what kind of, even if they should go into college education for what kind of career they may want to do, what should that education system look like for them to function at a high level, right? But one of the good things, that's about college, the kind of thing you're pointing out, is it's a nice time actually to get away and to be focused on some, education, although we would argue that's probably not the largest amount of time that things get spent, time allotment wise. But it is actually nice because you get smashed with a bunch of different people that grew up in different homes, different lifestyles from different parts of the country, and it's like a melting pot. And then it really like expands your worldview and your perspective, and it kind of, even if you revert, you end up settling on the way you were raised, like with your system of beliefs and everything. It's nice to kind of have to like settle that in for yourself,
right?
Without a lot of oversight and that kind of thing. Do you think that was part of how you ended up thinking about a degree change?
I think that, I had just really been, since I was a young girl, I thought, I'd look at teachers and I would think, I want to do that, and, I think that once I got in and I realized that, like, hey, there are other things in the world that, I'm interested in. And so, definitely learning about, I'm going to tell you, it was just some of the sociology classes, some of the criminal justice classes even that I took, that I was like, whoa, like the world is weird. Like, I'm kind of interested in learning more about this, But I think, yes, but I agree with you. But, still understanding like the basics of who you are, how you were raised, your belief systems, all those were important parts of it for me, definitely making decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I think something you're pointing out that I've been saying a lot to people these days is, please, like, we could use more curiosity.
Yes.
I think it's important for every person to have a system of beliefs, have a way that they make decisions, like guideposts for how they evaluate things as a family or, personally, whatever. It's really important to have convictions, but it's also important to like maintain some element of curiosity.
To ask the question. Yes, to ask the question.
That's one of the things I used to talk about all the time back when I led a sales team at, in my previous life. Asking questions, having a natural curiosity, and that trait, that personality trait in your professional career can really help you, just dramatically help you as far as advancing to the next level, because you're always trying to constantly learn and get more information, and the more people see that, that obviously helps you out, and they see you as someone who's wanting to continue your professional development. So.
Yeah, and it builds better relationships. Asking questions always is a better place to start than answering, offering advice all the time. We talk about that in our business is, our job's really to ask questions and then give information back so families can make good decisions.
Right.
So that's really cool. So so switching majors, like, that's really interesting. So what did you do immediately after college? Did you go get a job as a sociology expert? I almost couldn't get that word out.
It's been an interesting path over the past, all of my adult life. So the first thing that I did, actually even before I was out of school, was I worked in a drug rehab, as a counselor in a drug rehab. What I found for my degree being in sociology, it's actually led me in a bunch of different directions that allowed me to do many different things as I felt so inclined I would switch. So I worked as a drug counselor at a clinic, and did that actually before I graduated and for a few years after I graduated. You want to hear all the things I've done? Because I've done a lot of things.
Well, this isn't a true confessional or anything, but
all of the careers I've had.
No, I always think it's interesting, like the first, because people like work summer jobs when they're in high school and do that, but I always think it's interesting, like, what was the first thing you did after college?
That's what I did. So I worked in I worked in a daycare and a child care most of the time I was in college, and so I did end up going back to that particular child care center and worked as the director for a while. But that was a few years after I graduated from college.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So
I went back to kids. So
you started with drug and rehab,
yes,
then back to the children. All right, I need a little innocence, right? I've got this. What would you say is the biggest thing you took away from working at the Drug and Rehab Center, though?
Really just to understand people, and no one plans that's what they're gonna, where they're gonna end up, and so just not judging people. I mean, that is for sure like what I personally took away. But I also learned a lot about just how businesses, in that particular, that was new to me to work in that type of field. So how the business operated. There's some counseling centers that were more nonprofit and some that were for profit. I worked for a for-profit location, and just some things about that I liked and some things I didn't like.
Okay.
So.
I can imagine the level of empathy required to work in an environment like that.
Yeah, and I would say we'll talk more about what else I've done, but I can tell you that back then. And even what I do now, like I still like just watch people just struggling, and so I was like, how do we help more? So the empathy, you have to have it, to be in that environment.
Yeah. Cool. So then you went into childcare. How long were you serving as director there?
Probably 4 or 5 years.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah, I was there for quite some time. So.
And was it like daycare and preschool, or
yes. Mm-hmm.
So like infant to
kindergarten,
basically?
Yeah, it was 6 weeks to actually school age, so we would have after school care, that kind of thing. So through like 5th grade or something. So, and that seems like that was such a long time ago. But yeah, it was, I learned a lot about the administrative part as the director there, as well as the relational part that goes with, making sure parents feel comfortable with you, leaving you leave your kids. And this was before I was a mom, so I probably would even do some of that different if I had it to do over again. But yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. We obviously have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
One was in kindergarten, and thankfully our daycare and preschool is able to reopen. Mm-hmm. And so, it's actually been nice to have them, because I think they really missed the socializing aspect of that. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things, because my wife and I both grew up and we had moms at home. Mm-hmm. So I remember when we had our first kid, she was like mortified to hand off our baby to someone else. And but now you realize like how like social they are, and like all these skills they develop from being around other kids at like a really young age, and those formative years is really cool. So you served as director of a daycare. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, given what we're going through with COVID and all that. What would you think it's like right now? Because I know kind of how our schools dealt with it, but knowing a little bit about the operation side of that, what do you think is going into these directors of and owners of these daycare and preschools to like protect the kids and think about the families?
I can't imagine the burden that they feel. That's what immediately jumps out to me. I just think, what a burden they have to feel to be able to follow all these mandates and do all the things. And I say all the time, I'm glad I'm not doing that now. It would be such a burden. But I think when that's what you're doing and your heart is for these kids and these families, like you are going to do everything you can to make sure that everybody is safe and you're following all the guidelines you can. So but tremendous responsibility there, for sure.
Yeah, cool. All right, so what was the next chapter? What was it like? You don't have to go. We don't have to do a chronological thing.
Yeah.
I would say it was like the next big.
So I left the child care center that I worked at, and actually took a job on staff at a crisis pregnancy center, and loved that. Worked there actually when sometime in the middle of all this I got married too. So and so worked there when our daughters were born, and so just really I stayed there until my youngest daughter, who is now 19, was 2, and and then I stayed home after that for a while, homeschooled and did all of those things. So so those 4 years back in college I put them to good use. Yeah, and then I actually you can jump in and ask me questions about any of that, but that time period, we were a blended family, so my husband had 3 boys, and then we had 2 girls together, and so we had 5 kids from diapers to high school, and it was a busy, crazy time of life. But I ended up actually going back in, I did actually teach in a private school when we put our daughters in school when they were in middle school. So I taught in private school then for a while, and then ended up in the administration of that school. And yeah, so it's just kind of weird world how like I just have been moved from different things. But again, I think a lot of it had to do with just that my degree was so general that it allowed me to really move around in different ways. And so now, so I was there for 5 years at the school. I was at Beth Haven Christian School, and then I took a job as executive director of another pregnancy center, crisis pregnancy center. So I've been there now for 4 years. So.
4 years, cool. Now that was an existing charity.
Yes.
How long has the charity been around?
It's been around for 14 years. When I took the position, they were celebrating their 10th anniversary.
Okay.
In Shelbyville.
Okay. So when you, I always think it's interesting, like thinking about the transition, because an executive director is kind of the really important role with the charity. So what was the, what was the transition like for you coming in as an executive director?
So I had moved from teaching at the school to becoming the head of school. So I had done that for 2 years. So I was very familiar with being in an administrative role. And so going into, actually, there were things that were easier and harder about switching into a different administrative role like this. One is I had a smaller staff. So I went from a staff of 20 plus people to a staff of 5, and I was like, ooh, this is going to be hard. We are all going to know each other. And it, there were definitely some challenges in that. It's a little easier when your staff is bigger to not, I don't want to say not be involved, because I cared about, and I think we all cared about each other, but it was easier to lead a group that we weren't like in each other's faces all the time like we were in the pregnancy centers.
Delegate versus being, everybody has to be a jack of all trades.
Yes, right? yes. But, I will tell you that, also I feel like part of the role of the executive director was to go in and say, what's working well, what's not working well, and adapt to the things that we needed to change. And so really spent a lot of time working on changes in that first year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now what was, so a lot of change going on. What was, what were some key factors you thought that where you were, because the nice thing is I think when you have a new leader come in this organization, they have a new perspective. They're kind of bring up to speed, and sometimes it's not necessarily like that the other leader did. It's hard to see when you've been involved with it, and it's nice to sometimes bring in outside perspectives into charities.
And I think that's it. I think that I came in with no, I didn't know anybody on staff. I didn't know anything that was going on. I just knew that I had worked in the crisis pregnancy center world before, and I knew that when I went in that we weren't. I would also say we had a mission statement. That is a large part of why I took the job. I believed in the mission statement, and we were not fulfilling the mission. And so we had to make the changes to actually start really working on fulfilling the mission. And it's real easy, I think, I tell my board all the time, like, keep me on mission, and if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, then it's time to get rid of me and get somebody else in, because you're right, we can get blinders on and just think that it's okay, but part of me is never okay with where we are. Like, we will always continue to do better. So we just changed a lot of things, like some programming things, just the way that we were interacting with clients, just a bunch of different things that were happening. In that first year, we saw an 89% increase in the number of people coming through as those changes were being made. So, that doesn't speak to me, that speaks to our team. It was a team of people that were working together to make that happen. Yeah, so for everybody that's not as familiar with, obviously, Pregnancy Crisis Center and that, like, that can mean a lot of things. What would you say is, like, your main, what is the mission statement? That's important. And then also, what would you say differentiates yourself? Like, what's unique? Because obviously I've been there. I feel like I understand it decent. And I would say one of the things that came away for me was, and I'll talk about it after you answer. So what is the mission? Yeah.
What do you think is what separates you all?
So the mission, I will paraphrase the mission and just say, that we're there to save women and babies from abortion, but we're also to support and empower women and families by sharing the hope, love, and grace of Jesus. And so how do we do that? I think that was the question that I had. How do you do that well? Because we're not there to tell people what to do. We're just there to really love them, care for them, speak into, the fears that they have, to share the truth, about things. But, I just want to educate. But beyond all of that, it's just really about loving. So you do that. And I believe the most important thing that we're supposed to do is develop relationships with the people that are coming through our doors. So these women, the men that come with them, we're supposed to really care for them and walk with them as long as they'll allow us to walk. So, you hear, I really struggle with a lot of the terms because they become so political, pro-life, pro-choice, all that stuff. I just want to love on the women that are in a situation they didn't plan to be in, and how do I care for her well? And if she chooses to go and have an abortion, I'm still going to love her. I'm still going to care for her, because that's what we're supposed to do. That's really the heart.
Yeah, because that's what's unfortunate is I think it does become very political in that. And so, it's a resource. It's a way to love people. It's a way to tell them that there is a conversation, and if they want to come talk.
Yes.
One of the things I remember was that lens for it, because I feel like everybody I had talked to previously was very much put a flag in the ground.
Yes.
And they're like, we're on this side of the fence or something like that. And when I never got that from you, it was more I just really care about these women, and I really want to show them that I love them, that charity loves them, and we're here to support them in any capacity, right? No matter what the decision is.
Well, when you're dealing in absolutes, it becomes a lot harder to really display and show that love and affection to someone else, and for them to even receive any of that in any way, shape, or form if you're drawing that line in the sand.
And I think too that I had a staff member who said, we're not pro-birth, we're pro-life. So, and if you
really
think of that, that's really what so many times pro-life is, perceived as, is really pro-birth. Have that baby, focus on the baby. But I'm like, no, focus on the mama, love her for where she is. Walk through all of this with her. And, I just have so many of the girls that have come through that center that, I would move them all into my home. I love them, we don't have the space, but, but that's really my heart, and it's really the heart of my team. It's really the heart of us.
One of the things I thought was really cool and what I thought was unique, in addition to the attitude, and I think it's really interesting, pro-life versus pro-birth, is, and I think that lends really well into what I'm going to say is, I love how there was such a focus and intentionality between caring for the women after that decision's been made, right? And the way that you position the education, development, support, community, and all that kind of thing, I thought was really cool, because you're right, all right, cool, they had the baby, they didn't have the baby. Now this person either way feels isolated in some capacity. They feel like their family is not treating them the same way. Regardless of what decision they made, there's going to be conflict, right? Because it is a very difficult thing to deal with and think about. And I think it's really cool how you care and support them after the decision and build that community around those things. And I think that is really unique, at least as I understand it. I think it's different.
And I think it's really true. That's, we offer different classes. We offer one-on-one peer counseling. We just do whatever we can to just stay connected. So that connection can last as long as somebody wants, if they have a 5-year-old, but we've known them for 5 years, keep coming back. We love you, just keep doing that. That's what it's all about.
Well, I would imagine those types of people can serve as a testament to the love and assistance that you're able to provide, not only at that point in their life, but well beyond after deciding to have their child.
It's been so interesting to we had one of our we call them clients. I don't really like using that word, but I'm just gonna say we had a former client who for her birthday she posted on Facebook she had a fundraiser for us. I'm like, oh my goodness, those things are just so humbling, and it just also just reminds you of the relationship part of what we do. And we do a bunch of different programmings, and but the whole goal is how do we walk through this with you? As long as you want us to, we're here. And
How do you, as the leader of that team, how do you develop that culture that you were referring to, as far as, everyone having the heart and the love and the compassion to be able to do this and provide these services? How do you ensure that within your overall culture and within your team?
It's probably a hard question for me to put into words, but I think that it's really, I try to be super transparent about the passion I have, the desire I have. I feel like it's so important for anybody that I'm considering hiring, even the people that were there when I took over. I think that it's just really important to be able to vocalize, but also live out the passion and the desire and the mission that we're trying to achieve. And I think that if you're not on board with that, you don't usually stick around, and that's okay. Because we've had
promoted to client.
Yeah, we've had volunteers that have come and gone, and that's okay too. And also different seasons of life. But I just think it's so important just to continue to have the conversation. But I also know that it's important for me to model that. I have to show that too.
Yeah. That's So let me ask you this: you've been in business and a lot of different things for a long time. Is there anything unique, shows connecting the Commonwealth, we're talking about business, as a woman, as somebody that's in the business community and, has been at the head of, at the top of the organization. Is there anything that you'd like to kind of point out about your experience in that way? Or have you not had any sensitivities to where people have made that difficult for you, or,
So we're a faith-based organization, and so I deal with a lot of churches. I deal with a lot of I'll say pastors and ministers, that type of thing. And for the most part, like, oh my goodness, they love what we're doing and they get on board. But I can tell you there's been plenty of meetings I've been to where I'm the only female in the room. But that's okay with me. I'm honored that I would be invited, and I'm also honored when they allow me the opportunity to just share about what's going on. I'd never back down from any of those opportunities.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. I know you didn't. I know you wouldn't. But I've known you for a little while. But I just was curious as to has there been any conflict or any ways that you've had to address that conflict?
I mean, maybe there have, and I didn't realize it was conflict.
You're just moving right through it.
Yeah, so maybe but I don't. I know that I'm in the role I'm in for a reason, and I'm not afraid of that. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's the right way to say that, but I just feel I feel confident in what we're doing and what our mission is, and I will talk to anybody about it. So cool. I'm good with that. So
all right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's. I want to unpack. So we know that you have a passion for women, children. Mm-hmm. Is there any other big passion that you have that you're excited about?
Yeah. So I'll tell you that, in the 4 years, especially in the past 4 years, I've just kind of watched. I've watched. Whether it's friends, whether it's girls that are coming through the center or whatever, I've just kind of watched people like continue on these like cycles. Sometimes they're not such great cycles to be on. Sometimes they're just kind of, I just watched barely hanging on. We're doing these things over and over, and I feel like we have to have better tools to understand ourselves, the reason why we do some of the things that we do. And so, I definitely have, in the last few years, really grown to I think that the tool of the Enneagram has really transformed a lot in me to understand myself, and which is also part of why I probably don't back down from some of the things. Yeah. But
now, how is, for those of you that are not familiar with Enneagram, because we're in Kentucky, so if you're not listening to us, you may not understand our pronunciation of it. How is that spelled?
It is. Oh man, it's ENNEAGRAM.
All right, cool. So. Yeah, because there's a million ways. So if you all are listening to this, if you're a big fan of personality things, I know I am. Dinah was kind of mortified when she talked to me about it a couple months ago that I was not aware of Enneagram because there's the DISC assessments, Myers-Briggs. those kind of things, and they're pretty popular with businesses.
Yeah.
So
and they're all good. Like everything's good, but I think that for me, and I'm familiar. Strength finders. A bunch of different things. But and honestly, strength finders is what we use at the center for the last few years. But I was introduced to the Enneagram, and it just grabbed me because it really talks about the why behind our behaviors, and the why has made all the difference. So I think it really is a tool. So I actually completed a course to become a certified Enneagram coach, and I'm using that in the center that I'm a part of, but also with individuals and within my own family. And I believe in the power of understanding yourself and the people around you, but it all starts with understanding yourself. It's not to fix somebody else, it's to understand yourself, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no, we did. Eric, do you remember what the personality one we did before? Was it a DISC assessment, or was it Strength Finders?
It was not Strength Finders, it was a DISC.
Okay.
Or it's either DISC or Myers-Briggs. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I've done, I think, 4 or 5 of these over my professional career over the last 10, 15 years. And they all kind of flow together. This one's a little bit more interesting and a little bit different, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think that's how when I was introduced to it, I was like, oh my goodness, I've already heard these before, I've already done these. I studied some of this stuff in school, and so I really was hesitant, and just people were super persistent with me. And I finally just listened to a podcast on my drive home one day, and I was like, whoa, I want to know more. And so that's really what started it all for me, was a podcast.
Yeah, so I know it was interesting that I think it was based on a DISC assessment, but we have 6 partners in our firm, and it was really cool. And you and I talked, so Eric's finding out now probably, but we need to I think it would be fun to do the Enneagram assessment and talk about it as a group, since it is kind of a different layer. But it was kind of, I've always liked the personality things. They interest me because you get the good ones and you're like, oh, and it's funny, you go in there and then you kind of, with the partnership, we really have to work well together, and we all are completely we have some unique things about us, but there's some similarities and then a lot of differences.
Sure.
And how to your point, how you operate is more important than understanding, how Eric thinks, right? It's more to what's the best way for me to communicate effectively with Eric?
Right.
And when we're working with a client, sometimes it's good to think even about the personalities in our team and say, well, if we mix these two, that might be the best way to, serve our clients.
Yeah, I think, I definitely use it with my team, and it kind of goes back to, what we were talking about early on too, is if you really don't understand each other, and if you don't understand yourself, communication can be such a hindrance, and it can cause a lot of problems. So I think it's different. It's totally different than the others, and I think it's just been very helpful for me and for my team.
Cool. So you mentioned you thought one of the differences was it talks about the why. What can you give an example of maybe something that you learned from Enneagram about yourself, or someone that you mentioned your family or somebody? Is there a difference between how there was something different about that made it more helpful for you?
This is one of my favorite stories to tell. I'm going to throw my husband under the bus for just a second, but he'll be okay. So Enneagram is based on 9 different personality types. Okay, so 1 through 9. Without going into too much detail, my husband's a 1, I'm an 8. Okay, so what I have learned, I'm going to say, first, I learned about myself first. Completely learned about myself. It wasn't about fixing him or it was all about understanding myself. But then I did, I was curious and wanted to understand him better. So here's my favorite story. So we had went on a trip, and we were gone he was gone for a week, and then he was flying home, and he gave me a bag of things that I had to throw in my suitcase because he didn't have enough room in his suitcase. So anyways, I hadn't seen him for a week. Okay, so he had flown home a week before, I came back home. So I'm excited, and I'm trying to tell him all these things, and I'm trying to explain about, I don't know what I was talking about, but in the middle of that, I was throwing some things out of my suitcase, and you need to understand that a 1 is their nickname is the perfectionist. Okay, so Bill. So
yeah. not definitely not me, but definitely Bill.
So I said, oh, here's your bag, and it had some of his clothes and things in it, and I just dropped it on the floor. And I'm like still talking to him, and I'm just like watching him, and he's not listening because all he can see is that pack of clothes on the floor that needs to be put away in his closet. So I actually like that. Those things would have hurt my feelings and made me mad in the past. But I looked at him and I said, "Hey, you can put that stuff away real quick." And so he stopped, put it all away, came back out, totally engaged with me. You know what I mean? So, but understanding, you know, how he thinks and why he does the things he does really made a difference. That's just one silly little example.
Well, and the fact that I can imagine like him knowing that you recognized it.
He didn't know then.
He didn't know this was pre.
This is before he knew it.
All right. So you had already like basically graded your husband to know he was.
Which you are not supposed to do. You are not supposed to do. This is before I was an Enneagram coach. Okay, so. But yes, yeah. Now he would laugh and say, yeah, because he's studied and done some of the work for himself too. So.
Yeah.
So as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
What does the coaching session look like when you're working with, I guess we can use client in this case.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit different than your day job, but what does the coaching session look like? How do you work with someone or a firm or a company or
sure.
whatever?
And it can look different ways. I mean, you could definitely do groups of people, but we'll talk about just more of an individual one-on-one. It is, first of all, the first time that we would get together would be an overview of what the Enneagram is to even see if it's something that you really would want to be, to go through the whole coaching process. But then after that, 4 to 5 coaching sessions where we're walking through the different aspects. You would take a free assessment, then we would go through an assessment is 80% accurate. You have to do the work from there to figure out, is this really my type? Is this really my number? So just individual sections, about an hour long, of working through what that type is and understanding how that works and how you apply that in your life. A lot of reflection that goes on during that time, but it's super fun to really watch people transform over that time. It's really cool.
Awesome. So let's I'll pose a difficult question for you. What's or maybe easy, maybe what do you, when you think about 5 years from now,
mm-hmm.
what do you think you're in the marketplace, at least for you as a business, and that and with the charity, with how you think about some of this personality stuff, what do you think it's going to look like?
So that's a difficult question, mainly because the Enneagram coaching is newer to me right now, but I really believe that I'm supposed to intertwine the two in some ways. So, I said earlier, I've watched people go through this continuous cycle. Well, what if, I could go through and give them a tool that could really help them understand themselves. And the Enneagram is really about, understanding why you think and behave the way that you do. So what if that helped change behaviors, it could just be such an impact for so many people. So I think the same with businesses. I think, organizations, if we knew how to interact with each other differently, how productive could we be if we really understood each other well, think about all the times we have to tiptoe around, or we have to deal with an issue because you didn't understand you didn't understand that those clothes needed to be put away before, just the impact that can make. And so I feel very much that the two are supposed to be intertwined in the next 5 years. I'm hoping to really figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think any tools that an organization can have, especially as things get more and more virtual, right? Mm-hmm. Our society was becoming pretty virtual, and then COVID happened, and then rapid increase.
Sure.
And that virtual side. So having something to where you can start a conversation with other people about themselves, mm-hmm. and kind of back what we were talking about early, asking questions, having a curiosity.
Right.
This is a pretty natural springboard to that. And I also think one of the things that I've gotten in a lot of strange conversations in the last few months, right? COVID has introduced a new risk, mm-hmm. and people don't know how to think about it. Mm-hmm. And then you have, of course, different ways that people think about risk in any situation, but especially with a health crisis. And even in my house, my wife and I have a completely different way that how this risk correlates in our lifestyle and that kind of thing with our kids and all that. And it's just something you have to, I've had to realize that's just something that we're always going to, have a difference of opinion on, but that's okay. Like if you approach it with curiosity, and I think the other key factor with getting to productive resolutions, which I don't think there's a lot of productive paths right now for actual conversation, is I've learned that you kind of have to have some level of intimacy with who you're talking to, right? And I'm not talking about physical intimacy, all right? So whoever wants to make a joke about that, I'm talking about just like relationships. You have to have a strong relationship with people, and this is maybe a foundational way to move into at work, at home, in your community, however it may work, to start a relationship off with at least like, who are you?
Right.
What are you about? And they get to answer questions and kind of come to that conclusion and think about it first.
And I think too, to understand is like, your view on the world is not the only view on the world. I mean, I'm going to tell you, like, that was probably one of the most enlightening things to me, because I really thought I was always right. So,
which is why you're like, I was like, how has it been for you? As well, you're like, fine. Haven't noticed anything. No big deal. I've been right. We've moved forward.
Yes, it's all good. Yeah.
It's great.
But yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's just super enlightening. I think that it really does make a difference when you understand like other people can view the world differently, and it doesn't make them wrong. I mean, just really true.
I was going to say, in a world that's becoming a lot more fractured, when you look at social media, politics, and just so from a societal standpoint, everything that's going on right now, there's very little of that communication and understanding that is occurring on a macro level. So if you condense it down to a micro level, and you're talking about the relationships that you have in your life, whether that's at work, whether that's at home, whatever the case may be, friends, family, etc. If this is a tool, or could be a tool, to be able to help better define and improve those relationships, improve the communication that occurs within those individuals, and I think focusing on the micro relationships that you have in your life, more so than focusing on the macro view of society and the world right now, could have an immense
the one person that's in front of you at a time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That one person in front of you at a time, and then that leads into the macro. I mean, I think it's also, we've talked about empathy. You can't have empathy for the whole macro. You have to, like, I mean, maybe some people can. I can't. But that one person in front of me really makes a difference. And so I completely agree. It's about those individual relationships can make all the difference.
Yeah, and not everybody has the ability to affect massive societal change on a large scale. What you can control and what you can affect are the relationships that you have, and the ability that you have to communicate and maximize the value of those relationships.
Right. Which starts with understanding yourself.
Absolutely.
Completely starts with understanding yourself.
Really cool. Really cool. Well, Diana, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Have you enjoyed yourself?
I have.
You've had a good time? We've enjoyed
Yeah.
learning a lot about you. I think there's a lot to take away from this if you've been listening to, you're now 45 minutes in to like a wonderful podcast. So everybody that's still listening, I hope you've enjoyed getting to know Diana better. She certainly had a wonderful journey. Sounds like she had a great upbringing, a lot of good values, and has built a good diverse career. I'd say a lot of it seems like you're just a student of people, and I think you like to connect people and think about how people are connected. I think that's really cool. I love your curiosity about life and in business. So really neat. But thank you very much for coming on. She's been you guys know this is like the second episode of Connecting the Commonwealth. So, they're going to be released Tuesdays at noon. So, look forward to the next episode, but really appreciate that. Diana, what's a good way for people to connect with you? What's a good way for them to find you? If they've listened to you and they're like, I'd love to get coffee, maybe see if she's open to grabbing lunch or something. What's a good way for them to connect with you?
Probably the easiest way would be email right now. It's Diana Cahill, DianaCahill 502@gmail.com.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on. Everybody tune in. If you like the episode, please say so. Comment, subscribe, listen to the next one. Track Diana down if you want to have a conversation with her. I can vouch for her. She's a fun person to spend time with. And Eric, thanks for joining us too.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll see you guys on the next episode of Connecting the Commonwealth. Bye.
The information given herein is taken from sources that IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP Securities, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believe to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal-related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. This report may not be reproduced, distributed, or published by any person for any purpose without IFP's express prior written consent. Securities offered through IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, member of FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through IFP Advisors, doing business as IFP, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Family Wealth Planning Partners are not affiliated. The information given herein is taken from sources that IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as IFP, IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believe to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal-related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors.